What engine oil should you use in your car, and what are the effects of you moving from using 5W40 to using 15W40, and also what do those numbers even mean? So when it comes to understanding engine oil, there are two basic things that you need to understand. One is oil thickness, and two is clearances. So the first thing is your oil thickness, which is what these numbers represent. So the high number on this side, your 40, is the thickness of your oil when it's at operating temperature, and the 5W is the engine oil's thickness when it is cold. And I'll put a diagram on the screen to show what the different ratings 5W, 10W, and 15W coincide with when it comes to temperature. So you find that your 15W and even like your 20W50s are more on the warmer side, giving you about -7 degrees Celsius. They'll still perform well even at -7 degrees Celsius. And for your low side, you've got your 5W40, which performs up to -30 degrees Celsius. Now, obviously, we don't get those temperatures here in Zambia, so we actually have access to these three grades of oil. But it's a good thing to note that when you have a car that runs 5W40, that means that the car is able to start up and have no issues, even if you're in a place or where the climate brings the temperature below -30 degrees Celsius. So when you start your car and your engine is running, the engine oil actually runs through very tiny passages. Some passages can be even smaller than a human hair, and that's what I mean when I talk about clearances. So clearances are basically the spaces in which the engine oil has to flow through the engine, and that is why you get these multi-grade oils, because you don't want an oil that when your engine is cold, and those tolerances are much tighter, because we all know that when metals are cold they contract, and when they're hotter they expand. So when your car has been parked for a long time and you go to first start it in the morning, all the parts that are tied together in your engine are really tight, and they're in much tighter spaces. So you need an oil to work like a much thinner one, which is your cold rating 5W, so that the engine can easily pick up that oil, and that oil will easily flow through all those little tight spaces. And then once the engine warms up, it gets up to a 40 weight, and that way the thicker oil is able to lubricate the parts and make sure that no metal to metal contact is happening. But every engine, like I said, is made different. So others will have a 10W40 rating, and that means that it has wider clearances. And even older engines, like cars from the 90s, you find have a recommended oil rating of 20W50. So that means those have much wider tolerances, or clearances rather, within the components that are moving inside the engine. But a lot of cars have moved away from using a thick oil like a 20W50 and moved to grades like these three that you see right here. So then the big question is, when is it okay for you to switch from using a 5W40 and move up to maybe a 10W40 or a 15W40? So the first reason you might want to do that is when your car has a very high mileage. So like we talked about clearances in the beginning, your clearances start to get much wider as your mileage goes up. So most of the components in your car are not as tight as they used to be, and now you might start hearing things like valves ticking, especially at cold start, or even in some cases you might get a bit higher fuel oil consumption, and that might be a situation where you might need to upgrade to a 10W40 or a 15W40. What that does is, because you're using a heavier weight oil when it's cold, your engine actually sounds more quieter, and also will burn a bit less engine oil because you're using a thicker oil. Most of the wear that happens on your engine actually happens when your car is running through a cold start. So if you have an oil that is too thin and your tolerances have become much wider, then you find that your oil is getting through your piston rings, and that could be burning. But if you go into a higher grade, higher thickness of oil, then you are able to preserve your oil, and also your engine sounds much quieter and wears out less when it is cold. But of course, I only recommend that you have a professional mechanic have a look at the condition of your engine before you decide to upgrade to any of these engine oils. Don't just go ahead and make that change yourself. Have a professional look at your engine and recommend which oil you can use. And of course, we've got mechanics here at Tunex Automotive who are very experienced, and they'll be able to let you know which engine oil is best for your car. Another thing I think we can talk about is fully synthetic oil versus semi-synthetic versus conventional engine oils. So basically what fully synthetic means is that this oil was completely made from chemicals, as compared to, you know, these other oils that are a mixture of chemicals and just natural crude oil. So the best thing about fully synthetic oil is that because it was specially designed with chemicals, it gives you the best lubrication. It also gives you the best temperature management, so there's, you know, very little fluctuations that happen with the temperature in your engine when you have a fully synthetic oil. And also even just the lubrication properties of a fully synthetic oil are the best when you use this kind of oil. So semi-synthetics are a mix of fully synthetic and, you know, natural crude oils, so they give you a good balance of, you know, managing your temperature and also giving you good lubrication, while you know, your standard crude oils, which is normally starts from the 15 Ws to like the 20 Ws going upwards, will give you the least in terms of, you know, lubrication properties, also the longevity of the oil. So that's the time between when you have to change your engine oil. If you use a fully synthetic oil, you can get a very long range, you know, using the same engine oil, while when you go up the ladder this way, that you know, mileage starts to reduce. So if you're trying to get a longer life for your engine oil, it's best to use a fully synthetic oil, or you use a semi-synthetic oil. And, you know, if you're trying to work on a budget, because these ones will be much cheaper, you can use you know, conventional oil. But just remember that you're going to have to change your oil more often, and they are not as tolerant when it comes to, you know, fluctuations in temperature and being used in high performance vehicles. It is very important that you do not mix your engine oils. So for example, if when you did a service you used 5W40, but then your engine oil goes down and you're trying to get a top up, you should never go and, you know, add a 10W40 to your engine, or, you know, end up adding a 15W40 or even a 20W50 to your engine oil. You should always stick to the same. If you're using fully synthetic oil, then make sure that when you're topping up at the filling station, you get yourself a 5W40, and that will just make sure that you don't end up having you know, different chemicals reacting, which will reduce the lubrication properties of your engine oil, and also just make it unpredictable in terms of how it manages, you know, the temperature of your engine. And, you know, all kinds of things can go wrong when you mix different chemicals that are in these engine oils. Great, so I hope somebody learned something from this video about engine oils. And remember, if you want any of these engine oils, you can get those from our official parts sponsor, who are Autodrift, and you can go there and, you know, check them out. You can get all these varieties of oil from Autodrift. And also, if you want a professional mechanic to recommend what kind of engine oil you should use in your car, definitely bring your car down here to Tunex Automotive, where you can get a professional mechanic to look at the condition of your engine and recommend which engine oil is best for you. But yeah, I'll see you guys on the next video.